and we can clean up some of this mess that's around in the world. I'm also very proud to be a citizen of a democracy. We are a democracy. We vote for our leaders, and unlike some of the countries on the other side of the Pacific, who cannot vote for their leaders, whose leaders are despots, will stop at nothing to impose their will on their neighbors, will stop at will not shirk from terror to impose their will on other people. We have a right and a moral obligation to protect ourselves and to protect our allies from those who would impose force and exploit weakness to take advantage. Our allies in South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, all over, Samoa, they depend on us. They depend on, look, our military is not only are we a democracy who elects our leaders, our military are volunteers. We're not a dictatorship that conscripts people. They volunteer. People from all races are in our military. People from all religions are in our military. Our military represents us, the people of the United States of America and of Hawaiʻi. And I'm very, yes, they do. If you do not vote in the election, and I'm very active in the Democratic Party and several caucuses of the Democratic Party. I was embarrassed to see that in the last election, not only did Hawaii have a historically low turnout for Hawaii, it had a historically low turnout for the entire United States. If people come and do not vote, they do not vote, and then they come and show such a lack of aloha for our elected leaders. We are a nation of people, United States of America. Everybody has the same right to vote. If you do not vote, and then you come here and try to shout down the people who were elected, that doesn't show aloha. That is not consistent with the values of Hawaii, and it's not consistent with the value of the United States of America. We are here, I have lived here long enough to see the aloha that the people of Hawaii have had for the military. You look at the Great Aloha Run, you look at all the things that people do in Hawaii to make people feel welcome here, and you look at the aloha the military has for us. They're tutors in our schools, and yes, they do provide a lot of economic benefit to Hawaii, but that's not the reason they're here. They're here to protect us. They are the pointy end of the ihe that our own Hawaiian anthem speaks of. The ihe the leader wields to protect the people, and I'm very proud that the leader, their commander-in-chief, is a son of Hawaii, Barack Obama. And I'm very proud to have voted for him, and very proud to be from the state where he was educated and raised. And I believe that I think that if we show aloha for the military, yes, there have been mistakes made in the past, but going forward, they are being good citizens. I'm in the environmental caucus, and I've seen.
You're talking about our land, thieves. You're talking about our
I am a citizen of this state.
You're in the wrong state, wrong country.
Brother, we are all citizens of Hawaii. We all love Hawaii. I thank you for your display of aloha for people of all races and ethnicities and religions.
Come here with open hands.
Thank you, sir. I give 5% of my salary to charity. I give to the food bank. I volunteer.
Take it back to the continent.
Aloha kakau, mahalo nui loa, aloha.
Thank you, sir. Please, thank you. Aloha kako, and thank you for coming. We obviously, you can see the emotions that are in the audience. We do appreciate you being here. And as the gentleman rightfully explained, we have the lowest voter turnout. What he didn't explain was that Hawaii unfortunately has a history of problems within our electoral system, that the common people no longer believe that when we cast a vote in an electronic manner, that it's actually registered honestly, and that our voices in the electoral process no longer count. So unfortunately, whenever we have the opportunity to speak directly to people that actually can make a difference, we take that opportunity, and we really appreciate you coming all this way to hear what the rest of Hawaii feels and thinks. As you can see, our elected officials are doing their job. They're trying to protect Hawaii. But there's some of us here that actually are considering what the nation what the Army considers best for itself. And it's really rare that we can have a win-win situation where you folks actually know how expensive it is to base one of your troops here compared to any place else in the continent. And I know this because I used to sell real estate. So we know, yeah, that the VA loans and the incoming personnel and the investment opportunities that people can live off base, buy a house, make big bucks and sell it when they leave, or rent it out. Because there's a lot of property managers who are really happy to do that. Yeah, we know. And so of course the real estate industry is going to be against you guys leaving. But personally, because I have a hard time renting any place outside of my own parents' house, which is kind of embarrassing, yeah? Being my age, not being able to live on my own, because again, jobs, unless I'm going to get a job with the military-industrial complex, kind of rough. We all know this. That's why most of us got to go. That's why there's more Hawaiian people in Vegas and California, in the Bay Area. Those are the two times where again, the economy was real bad here. Yeah. So. That's why again, they're doing their job, and you know, the businesses that do have the money, of course, want you here, because right now they're feeding off of the pork that Senator Ito used to bring home. Yeah, and we know it's no longer coming. And in a way, again, it's a win-win, because I'm a farmer now. Yeah, so when the general here said that he is here for the people, I appreciate what he has to say. But you know what, honestly, I wish we could feed ourselves. I really wish the land, especially the 24,000 acres of grade A prime ag land that got banked at Schofield for future housing developments would be returned to us so that small farmers, once again, can grow the food to supply. So there isn't going to be a food riot. And so that the military doesn't have to be called out. Yeah? That's our hope for our future, that our water supply would not be contaminated by depleted uranium or by other chemicals that, again, unfortunately are coming out. I am a member of the Oahu Council for Army Downsizing, and I support the Army's proposal to downsize on Oahu. In fact, the Oahu Council for Army Downsizing does not believe the cuts on Schofield Barracks and Shafter go sufficiently deep enough to cut forces that would no longer have a mission once the two brigade combat teams are eliminated on Oahu. The OCAD does not believe the Army's combat and support forces stationed on Oahu are strategically located and readily available to support the national security strategy and national military strategy of the United States without immediately available airlift and sea lift to deploy these forces. The OCAD believes them to be isolated on Oahu and therefore a victim of the tyranny of distance in the Pacific. Moreover, the OCAD believes that the Army on Oahu lacks critically needed forced entry capability to allow it to enter hostile environments, a capability already possessed by the U.S. Marines presently on Oahu and throughout the Pacific. The OCAD believes taxpayers should not have to pay for redundant forces competing to do the same job, and redundant, geographically isolated forces occupy critical lands and consuming valuable resources that are important to the state of Hawaii and the Hawaiian community. Example one is Makua. You know, yeah, that we tied it up in lawsuits. You guys said you would do environmental assessments. It never got done. It's still being tied up in undeveloped. We celebrated 10 years of peace. No more fires being caused coming over Makaha. There's very few people here that actually live out in the most economically depressed area on Oahu. Yeah, I'm now living out in Waianae. Unfortunately, we see the homeless that come back from military deployments. They come live in our neighborhood, and we take care of them. We try. There's no suicide bombers, yeah? It's not that we're going to harm the military while they're here. This is Hawaii. We have a law. The hurt is still here. And we just want relief. We want to do what is permanent with a law. So thank you for coming to hear from us, the rest of Hawaii. We do appreciate you coming, but this win-win opportunity where you get to downsize and we get to try to rebuild. life the way it used to be for future generations. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good evening, General Flynn and members of the panel. I am Garrett Takara, and I am speaking on behalf of the Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters. We represent 6,000 members of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America and their families in Hawaii. We deeply are concerned and oppose a reduction of Army personnel in Hawaii, which would greatly be negatively impacting so many ways. We also oppose the proposed reduction as an organization of skilled construction craft workers. We feel that we have been a partner with the Army in Hawaii for generations. For our side of the partnership, we have geared up workforce readiness and training to meet the needs of Army construction. We have maintained the capacity to build projects ranging from military installations to residential communities for soldiers and their families. In turn, our members have raised families and contributed to communities with their wages they earn on Army projects. The privatized military housing communities are an example of this partnership. The new and renovated family homes represent a major investment. Our union and industry stepped up to meet the need for skilled workers at the time of a booming economy. We're among union parties to the PLAs, the project labor agreements, that continue to guarantee no strike and foster smooth and efficient operations on the projects. In the Great Recession, hundreds of carpenters and drywallers at the time would have been out of work, if not for the Army family housing projects. They would not have been paying taxes, contributing to churches or charities, or even buying equipment for the Little League teams. As with Hawaii as a whole, we have contributed and we have benefited. It would be devastating if so much is taken away from the partnership that was built over generations. Again, we humbly ask you to reconsider and request not to advance the proposed reduction of the Army in Hawaii. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I had something prepared for today, but I'm sorry, I'm taking off the gloves after how we were treated tonight. America has forsaken its principles. What happened to limited government and civil liberties? What happened to a non-intervention foreign policy? By the way, you on foreign soil. What happened to one nation under God? And by the way, that God that you supposedly worship says that they will turn their swords into plowshares. A nation will not train against nation for war anymore. The battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and authorities of the hidden world, hidden darkness. These words must come to fruition, lest the punishment of Ahab be upon you.
Thank you, sir.
Aloha. I'm Deborah Kimball, and I heartily support the U.S. Army recommendations to reduce Army personnel on Oahu by 19,800 troops. Certainly there are many peaceful and healthy uses that increase living aloha for the funds now paying for death and destruction. Certainly the Army will adjust, becoming more fit for the 21st century. Certainly Hawaii's people and land and sea have borne far more burden of the U.S. military than our population and our environment deserve. Hawaii should be the first or second state to see troop reduction and land and sea recovery from the told and untold damage here. You will hear complaints that the jobs and other income attached to the 19,800 troops would be a disaster. Nope. No. Those are nearly all very localized economic impacts in 3 towns, and we are creative, especially our governor and our mayor, Caldwell, our local leaders, and we can search for alternatives as soon as you give us the word. I volunteer for that job. Our population has truly boomed since Schofield and Shafter began, and we definitely need all this island's very finite lands for more than 8,000 housing units and healthy economic activities, especially local food production. So we hope very much that you will also return several bases on Oahu. Controlling 1/4 of this island's land makes the U.S. militarism so naked. Many of us dread bringing armed forces to the Pacific pivot. We want and need a Pacific. Some of us are sick of being the Hawaii spear, threatening that Pacific. Hawaii has more than done its share in blood, treasure, and aloha for the United States. And what has the U.S. given back? Very little mercy and a lot of damage. Please reduce the troops and the lands that you took. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Aloha, and thank you for coming. My name is Dr. Keone Dudley, and I do favor downsizing. My concern is for the island and our people. We are standing at the threshold of another huge burst of growth on Oahu. 80,000 units are currently planned, most of them homes for newcomers who don't live here yet. Downsizing the troops on Oahu by 18,900 would rescue our island from this onslaught of building. The market will be flooded with so many thousands of empty homes that building huge housing projects will no longer make sense. The farmland the housing projects would take is some of the highest producing in the world. 45% of the Oahu farmland now producing crops for the local market would be lost in the next few years to these housing developments. If the housing projects are not needed, we can save this farmland, which we will one day need for our survival. We have some of the worst traffic in the U.S. on our freeways. The 50,000 scheduled homes in Leeward will put 50,000 more cars on our freeway. All studies say that we will come to a standstill. With downsizing, we could keep those cars off the freeway. High house prices and high rents are a huge problem. Many work 2 or 3 jobs in order to pay for them. With the many empty houses that downsizing would bring, house prices and rents will come down, easing our people's burdens. Downsizing is good for our people and good for our island. I strongly support moving all 18,900 troops. Thank you very much.
Ma'am?
Aloha, I'm Ka'ili Nicholson, and I support the downsizing. I respectfully disagree with many of the statements that our legislators shared with us tonight, and for example, there will not be quiet in those neighborhoods because many families will be very thrilled to move into those neighborhoods, and the mom and pop stores will be happy to have these new people there because they'll be shopping in their stores instead of the PX. So I think the economic problem that has been mentioned is nothing that we can't handle. It'll be actually advantageous in the long run for our economy. I would like to mention the price that we pay for educating the families that are in the military here. And I wondered, why are all of our legislators so all except for Kaniala-ing, so much against the downsizing. And my answer has to be the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about. The money that they have, that their financial interest, has kind of distorted quite a lot of the information and perspective of many people, because they have so much money and power to get their message across. And I myself am a member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. You mentioned 9/11 this evening, and from my research, I have sadly concluded that there are criminal elements within our military and outside of our military who conspired to create this horrible tragedy of not 2 but 3 towers falling on 9/11, and it was a controlled demolition, not terrorists. And many more people are learning about this and understanding this and realizing that we have been deceived by the military-industrial complex for their own interests and their own gain of power and money. And as more of us recognize this and understand this, we are changing this, that they cannot continue to get away with this, that once we know the answers, once we understand that we've been deceived, that this will no longer be able to occur. And we will not have to have such a huge military budget anymore, because those who are actually provoking us into war will no longer have the power to do that. And one last thing, military service, everyone here, I know you're all here, whatever your position is, you're all here for the good. You're all here for what is best. You want the best for our people. I understand that, I appreciate that. And military people know more than any other that sometimes you have to give up personal needs and desires for the greater good. And so I do appeal to the military to realize that the greater good here is to give the land back to the people of Hawaii. And we have a great need for housing, as you know, and we have very sacred land here that we'd like to not be devoting to military purposes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir? Aloha, and thank you for this listening session. What I'm here to do this evening, gentlemen, is to present a case for Army downsizing in Hawaii. Why the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii and our congressional delegates have it wrong. As the discussion continues over whether the U.S. military will downsize its Hawaii-based personnel, Hawaii's congressional delegation maintains that defense is a critical economic sector for Hawaii. In a recent article from Washington, D.C.-based outlet, The Hill, members of the delegation talked about their strategy for regaining the defense and national security influence the Hawaii delegation once enjoyed under the leadership of Senator Daniel Inouye. Senator Brian Schatz was recently awarded a spot on the powerful Senate Appropriations Committee, once chaired by Inouye, while Senator Mazie Hirono was named the ranking member on the Senate Armed Services Committee's Sea Power sub-panel last week. In the House, U.S. Reps Tulsi Gabbard and Mark Takai have both been named to the influential Armed Services Committee, and both are Iraq War veterans. The Hill reports that Senator Schatz said the members of the delegation are pleased with the opportunities they have to shape Pentagon policy, including the pivot in U.S. military forces toward the Pacific. Representative Takai, meanwhile, is reported to have said, "I think it's very strategic to have all of our members focused on what matters most to the state of Hawaii, and one of the things that matters is definitely defense." I recognize that the delegation feels compelled to try to keep a strong military presence in Hawaii, but I hope they fail in that effort. If we adopt any perspective other than that of the small businesses who directly profit from Hawaii's substantial military presence, maintaining that presence does not make sense. Accordingly, the U.S. Department of Defense is advocating the transfer of 19,800 personnel out of the state. From the national perspective, even from a national perspective which emphasizes having a strong military, Hawaii is a very costly place to station troops. Compared to other bases on the North American continent, the training possibilities in Hawaii are substantially limited. There was a time when having ships and material assembled halfway across the Pacific meant a significant advantage for projecting our military force onto Asia. But today, that advantage has been greatly reduced. From a state of Hawaii perspective, we can begin with the taxpayer costs associated with the military presence. According to the Hawaii Department of Education DOE website, the average cost to educate a student in Hawaii is approximately $13,000. The average reimbursement for a federally impacted student is about $2,000, or 15% of the total cost. Hawaii taxpayers and the state government fund the remaining $11,000 balance. The website goes on to say that during the 2013 and 2014 school year, the state accounted for more than 28,000 federally connected students. 11,000 multiplied by 28,000 students gives us a current annual cost of $308 million, and that's after receiving the limited federal impact aid. Conversely, if Hawaii taxpayers no longer had to pay $11,000 per military dependent in our schools, we would suddenly be looking at a $308 million taxpayer subsidy. That is considerable. The officially approved point of view, which is pushed by our political and civic leaders, is that the military presence here is good for the economy. Rarely is it pointed out that every economic transaction has its costs and its benefits. And those costs and benefits are not borne evenly across the population. It is difficult to find an honest cost-benefit analysis of the military presence here. The Military Affairs Council of the Chamber of Commerce serves as a semi-official public relations operation for cheerleading the military presence. But they represent that sector of business which benefits directly, and therefore they have little incentive to provide a balanced perspective which fairly reflects the costs and who bears them. Those of us who rent, especially near a military base, are aware how military housing allowances drive up the cost of rentals dramatically. While that may be a plus for landlords, that advantage is negated by the huge disadvantage for renters. If the bases are downsized, the vacancies created in military housing will provide a significant boost in the supply of affordable housing for civilian renters. That would definitely be a plus. If the military decides to close down bases as part of the downsize, that will free up land for other purposes. The U.S. military controls over 20% of the land on Oahu.
25%.
That land can be put to productive uses which can provide jobs, housing, recreation for our people, and tax revenue for our county and state governments, which may be possible to afford an unaffordable rail. Though many base sites are contaminated with chemicals and ordinances, and the military will need to answer for cleanup costs before much of it could be repurposed. That is yet another reason to reduce the military presence and begin that process of reclamation. So while I do wish our delegation to Congress had more clout, as star advertiser, political radar blogger B.J. Reyes calls it, in this case, it may be better for Hawaii and its people that they don't. In the past, when the DOD wanted to downsize, the military here Senator Inouye had enough clout to block those efforts, thwarting a decision which would have, in fact, been more cost-effective for the U.S.'s overall military posture. There are businesses located near bases which benefit from the presence of military families, bars, restaurants, and certain shops that offer things which are not available for sale on base. And there are contractors and their employees who benefit from military contracts. But increasingly, those contracts are being controlled by large national corporations that bring in their own crews from the mainland. The opportunity to diversify our economy so that we are not so dependent on the military will, in the long run, be worth reducing its presence. The businesses who benefit from the military presence and the Chamber of Commerce, which represents them, have raised a slogan: keep Hawaii's heroes, save our bases, our communities depend on it. This slogan blends together an appeal to patriotism along with a barely disguised appeal to a pecuniary self-interest. The slogan suggests that we are being disloyal, either to the nation or to our neighbors. If we question the net value of the military presence or see this as an opportunity to plan for an orderly transition from military dependence, because we are very likely to lose those 19,800 Army personnel. Perhaps it would be more prudent to draw up some contingency plans instead of insisting all loyal people should stick their hands in the sand and pray that this threat just goes away. I thank you for your time, and one more closing statement. There was a gentleman earlier who said that his job and responsibility was to clear unexploded ordinances and reclaim the land. And he mentioned that we live in a democracy. I don't know where he went to school, because when I went to school, I was taught we lived in a republic. And nowhere in the Constitution is the word democracy ever spoken or written. So we must understand our history according to the timeline of where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am.
Aloha, my name is Raina Whiting. I strongly support the downsize. I am the director of In the Streets, which is a homeless outreach organization, and I also work at the Capitol. However, today I'm here as a community member. I want to share that my family is military. My father served in Vietnam. Both grandfathers and my great uncle served during World War II. 3 of my cousins have spent the better part of the past decade in the military, which includes time in Afghanistan and Iraq. I love military because the military is my ohana. That means family. I want to remind you all that this opportunity does not have to be either pro or anti-military. I really want to focus on looking at this as a unique and one-time opportunity for our ohana and our community. If I had an hour, I could outline all of the reasons why this opportunity could positively impact our community and our ohana. But unfortunately, I only have 3 minutes, and I will adhere to that time limit. I work with our houseless ohana every day, and over the past years, I've seen a huge growth in houseless ohana that I assist and represent. Mavoto did a national study that listed Hawaii as #1 in the nation regarding the most homeless per capita for the last 4 years in a row. One potential positive impact this opportunity could have is on our housing, particularly affordable housing availability. One thing that we cannot argue is that the military has made a direct impact on the cost of our housing due to the high amount of the military BAH housing subsidy. It is upwards of $3,000 depending on rank and number of dependents here in Hawaii. The proposed troop downsize could relieve the pressure on our housing market, At community outreach events here for our house list, the public housing officials said that there is between an 8 and a 12-year waiting list for our house list Ohana, and it has over 10,000 families on that waiting list currently. I urge decision makers to consider the positive impacts versus only the negative impacts that this potential downsize could have on our community and our Ohana. I also wanted to add that I find it really interesting, while our mayor has stepped out, that he finds his rail project more important than upkeeping our infrastructure that could house Hawaii's Ohana. And while this is a democratic state, we began this listening session with politicians that 100% opposed the downsize. And the lone politician that publicly supports the downsize was not offered the chance to speak as a politician in that grouping. That was Kaniela Eng, Representative Kaniela Eng. Additionally, for you folks up here, it's interesting to me that a majority of our community members that have testified in support of the military downsizing. That is a stark contrast to our politicians up here that did also submit testimony. And I wonder, I ask myself, are they really representing our interests and what we want to see happen with this potential military downsizing? Mahalo for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Aloha. My name is Kim Kompak, and I'm an instructor and graduate student at UH Manoa in the English department. And I just want to give a shout out to Kanaka Maoli, on whose land that we're all occupying right now. I am so thrilled to be here and to be with so many smart people speaking truth to power. This is a unique opportunity, and I am thrilled to be here. I'd like to mention that I'm also a member of Decolonial Pinay, a group of diasporic Filipinos here on the island, committed to the demilitarization and liberation of Hawaii and all its peoples. I want to remind the committee of 3 facts we all know but seldom admit. First, while the military is credited with being a job creator and a vehicle of community life, in truth it is the institution tasked with waging war, destruction, and death. Second, the U.S. war machine is highly profitable for an elite military-industrial complex, and it is that industry that has spun U.S. foreign policy completely and obscenely out of control. Third, the U.S. flag no longer represents democracy, it represents capitalism and a voracious greed for other people's oil, land, and natural resources. This idea that the military, and even war itself, is good for the economy and therefore cannot be questioned, exemplifies the kind of morally bankrupt thinking that troubles me so deeply. It's time to reflect on Dr. Martin Luther King's words, quote, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom." It's not possible to ask dead soldiers whether it was worth it to sacrifice their lives to avenge 9/11 or to locate weapons of mass destruction that never existed in the first place. No, the dead cannot speak for themselves, so it's useful to think about those dead as we plan on how we want to live in the future. According to the Department of Defense, as of this month, the wars on terror, as they're called, have resulted in the deaths of 6,847 U.S. military, right? Twice how many died in 9/11, with over 52,000 people wounded in action. That's just on the U.S. side of the gun. Additionally, there are multiple epidemics growing in the U.S. military: domestic violence, rape, post-traumatic stress disorder, and suicide. According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, 22 veterans commit suicide every day, now outpacing combat deaths. In Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, deaths range anywhere from 174,000 to 655,000, with literally millions more left impoverished, orphaned, widowed, and displaced. And as our own Hawaii-born Major Antonio Taguba reminds us, tens of thousands more imprisoned and tortured. For all these reasons, I urge you to support this downsize and return those lands for an exclusively non-military purpose that supports human dignity and peace. Thank you.
Amen. Aloha mai kākou. My name is David Henkin. I'm an attorney with Earth Justice. For the last 17 years, I've had the opportunity to work with the Army on their environmental compliance at Makua and with respect to the stationing of the Stryker Brigade here. In that time, I try and focus on the facts. I mean, and the facts that I want to focus on are your facts. So these are from your programmatic documents, and I think that and then from other documents that the Army has produced over the years, as well as the General Accounting Office. So these are government facts. Decisions were made with respect to Army stationing in the 20th century, some dating back to the 19th century. And we have what you call legacy placement of a lot of your forces. We now have an opportunity with the downsizing to make a more rational allocation of the forces. And so I'm going to tell you some things that you know or you should know. Number one, you don't have adequate training lands in Hawaii for your existing forces. You constantly bring up this issue. There's not enough training land. Specifically for your Stryker Brigade, it was a poor, politically motivated choice to bring the Stryker Brigade here. It's a medium armored unit, and you just don't have the maneuver space, and we don't have the terrain to accommodate that type of training. In addition to that, the lands that you do have are rich in biological and cultural resources, which is a gift to not only the people of Hawaii, but to all the people of the United States and of the world. But for you, it's a constant headache. There are over, and this is your study, over 1,000 native Hawaiian archaeological sites on your lands. That constrains your maneuver, it constrains your live fire training, it leads to all sorts of National Historic Preservation Act issues. You also have on your facilities 86 federally listed endangered plants and animals found here in Hawaii and nowhere else in the world. And you know exactly what that means for you and the constraints on your training to avoid the fires, the burden on your budget to try and outplant these plants and animals so that you won't drive them to extinction. You know all these things. You also know that despite the common rhetoric that Hawaii is a forward-based location for Army forces, that the world is round. And that unlike the old days where you generally deployed by ship, and where it might make some sense to be here, for rapid deployments, and you're trying to become a rapid deployment force, you deploy by air. And you also know that your air assets are not here in Hawaii. Your air assets are in California, Washington State, and Alaska. The most recent report that I'm aware of, and you may be aware of more recent ones, is this the General Accounting Office report from June of 2003, Military Transformation, quote, realistic deployment timelines needed for Army Stryker brigades. And it confirms that Hawaii is not closer to the areas that you want to deploy to in East Asia, or South Asia, or Southeast Asia. You actually get there faster from other locations because you don't have the airlift here in Hawaii. So they actually have to fly here, pick you up, and then fly over open ocean to get there. Last night I was having dinner with a Marine pilot, and I pointed out the fact that if you're flying from Washington State or California to get to North Korea or China or an ally in Japan, you're flying over land. You're flying over Canada, Alaska, the Koreas. That's safe. No one in their right mind would put a division or a brigade on planes over open ocean if you had other choices. And what you are doing in this process is making choices. Not for the Army of the 20th century or the 19th century or the 18th century, but the Army of the 21st century. And the facts are, it's expensive here, you don't have the training lands you have are constrained, and you're sea locked. You can't
get out of here easily, you'd be in a better position to protect our interests internationally if you were on the coast. Just a couple of quick comments for the people who are concerned about the economic effects in Hawaii. Again, this is the Army study. And the Army study says even if we lost all 16,000 soldiers, there would not, I repeat, not be a significant impact to sales or income. And that is on page 4-790 of their June 2014 supplemental EA. The significant socioeconomic effects are not from income or sales. They are from employment and population. Well, the people losing their jobs and the population that's going down are not the people who live here. So, you know, there will be fewer people who don't live here living here. They will have fewer jobs. But in terms of the loss of employment and population to people who actually live here and plan on living here and continue living here, it's insignificant. And as far as the sales and the income, the Army study says even if you lost all 16,000, it would be insignificant. Now, no one in this room, I think, really believes that they're going to downsize by 2 brigades. So if you look at their January 2013 study, it talks about the effects of losing 1 brigade, and I would respectfully suggest the Striker Brigade for the reasons aforementioned, which is you can't really train here, and you can't get them off the island if you wanted to. There, the sales volume would not go down by 1.35 billion, it would go down by 458 million, which sounds like a lot, but you have to realize that's in the context of a huge Hawaii economy, and that is not a significant effect. Even the 1.35 billion is not a significant effect. It's within the normal range of Hawaii's economic variation. And also, to our legislators, what undertaking would we subsidize with our land, our precious resources, that supposedly brings in $1.35 billion, but actually only pays 9.2 million in GET? That's because it's not staying here. It's going elsewhere. So if we believe that the highest and best use of Hawaii's limited land is for this enterprise, as opposed to feeding our people, or increasing tourism opportunities, or other things like that that augment our self-sufficiency, I suggest we should take another look at it, because a return on investment of $9.2 million in sales tax on $1.35 billion in alleged activity is not a good return. Lastly, on the housing front, and I'm sorry the mayor left, but the governor is still here, the speaker's still here, other people concerned about housing. Again, the Army's numbers. They can only house 40% of their soldiers with dependents, which means the other 60%, which are taking up the 2 and 3 and 4 bedroom houses that are not on the rental market, they live in the community. So the Army study from 2013 says, if you eliminate 1 brigade, you free up 8,000 rentals in the community. So, you know, if you're looking for a quick fix to housing the people who live here, who vote here, and who are going to stay here, I suggest you support downsizing a brigade. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Big Horse. From my tribe, my nation is from New York. I'm here to speak on behalf, I'm also a combat veteran. I did 36 months in theater in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I survived that. I did 10 years in the Army. I've been here since 2008, and I had a platoon of soldiers at Schofield, and I just want to salute you all for being here, and I think we're all in the same, we're really in the same boat here, trying to figure out what to do with the future of Hawaii. I want to stay here. And as people have mentioned, the global war on terror is a very serious issue. You know, if there was a bombing here in Honolulu, you know, I don't know what I'd do. You know, I don't know where else to go. So this is like, you know, home for me. So I'll always be a soldier. And as the elite 1% of the American population, I think the United States needs to develop a relationship with the Kanaka Maoli. This land was like the Native Americans. It was, taken from. And their burial grounds, my ancestors, President George Washington sent an extermination order to annihilate my ohana. So what I ask So I speak for the Hawaiians that are not here, that live on Big Island, that live in Kauai, that where there's military, there's Navy everywhere. We should have the same dialogue with the Navy and with the Marines and with the Air Force. Anyway, to Malama the land, because that's why we're here. We're here to protect the land. You know, we're Army. We're supposed to be here for the land, and it's not happening. There's depleted uranium. There's no cleanup. I think the soldiers, when they come here, when military comes here, they should be briefed on the culture that this was a kingdom, is a kingdom. It's still here, and they need that training. They need to know what aloha is. They need to know what ohana is, what ha means. It means the breath of life. They need to have that mandatory training once they get here. And just a couple more things is like to reiterate what President Cleveland, what President Clinton, with the apology resolution here that he instated here. There's been no treaty. There's been no treaty with the United States. There's no agreement. So really, the Hawaiians here could really, file a big lawsuit. So could the Native Americans against the United States, because this is their territory. This is their kuleana. This is their aina. This is their land. So perhaps open a dialogue with Kanaka about what the operations is here. Help use the military to protect the people, the native people here, and like Tonga, like the Kingdom of Tonga, perhaps. Tonga is a kingdom, and if they need military support, the United States is going to go, Great Britain's going to go, everyone's going to have their back. Australia, the same could happen here. That's my suggestion. And that's about it. We just need reparations. We have, the main thing is Pohakuloa. I physically marched from Hilo all the way to Pohakuloa to speak to the military commanders there about the kupuna that are buried there in Pohakuloa. And that, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like the military is here and just destroying the land, destroying graves and kupuna and bones, and it's just not right. So there needs to be a briefing, why we're here, why are we doing training. We do it with the Iraqis, we do it with the Afghanis. I worked for a task force commander. I saw them come in, we had humanitarian aid. There needs to be a reparation, some sort of restitution for what's happened here. Kaho'olawe, all the bombing and all that stuff. So that's what we gotta work on, because like everyone said, people are homeless. The ohana here is being destroyed. We need jobs, we need housing, we need, there's child abuse issues, there's all sorts of stuff. Another point, just my last point, is would we do this to the Arlington National Cemetery? Would we bomb all our warriors, that are buried there? It's the same analogy, So please consider that. The Kanaka know how to take care of the land, and they will very willingly brief you and help you, because we can work together to figure this out for the future of Hawaii and my ohana that I will have someday here, my future keiki. And as a Native American, we always look forward to the 7th generation. We don't look right now, we look 7 generations ahead, and that's all I ask. So mahalo, I salute you. Thank you, sirs, ma'ams, and honored dignitary governors. And I wouldn't want to be in your position, because I know what being a leader is. So thank you, seriously, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. My name is Travis Thompson. I'm a graduate student at the University of Hawaii in the Center for Pacific Island Studies. And this semester, we're going over the legacy of the military in the 20th century, and I'm telling you guys, it doesn't look good. I don't know how the semester's gonna end for you folks, but I also wanted to share a poem, but before that, I want to add my name to the kids' petition to send you guys home. And then for your local politicians, the ones that actually stayed, hey, aloha, thank you guys for staying. I'll give you this poem. Actually, everywhere I go, I always give
One poem to everyone. Everywhere I go, I was at Chaminade University last week, and every time I touch a microphone, I always give a poem to the audience. I'm gonna do 2 for you today. The first one's really short. I give this to you. I only ask that you take this poem and you put it in your pocket, and you give it to someone else, all right? That's aloha, all right? It goes like this. Really easy poem to remember. It goes like this. But you gotta be dramatic when you share it, okay? I'm not playing. You Pentagon guys know dramatic guy. It goes like this. Roses are red. Violets are blue. Some poems rhyme. Some poems don't. Thank you very much. That poem is yours. All right, and this is what I really came to do. I'm really tickled about the idea that the Pentagon's gonna be reading this poem. And I'm also really I understand from the local politician's perspective, hey, Danny's dead, yeah, you know, yeah. And I brought plenty of money, and now you guys all scrapping over who can bring in the most now, yeah? Who can keep the most now, yeah? It's not the poem, by the way. I understand, hey, 1.3 billion with a B, yeah, that's what Maisie said. Oh, yeah. Well, that's a big number, man. I'm thinking, man, maybe you guys should get royalties from American Sniper. That's 200 million right there. And then I was thinking I was hearing the politicians talk about, sorry, these are just comments I wanted to make sure I got to. How the military is reading to our kids in the schools. And I was like, oh yeah, teachers do that too. But would I let the teachers go around and desecrate the aina? No, I don't think so. Would I let the teachers go around and be the horrible stewards they've been and renege on leases for lands like the kind of land that this place is on? No, I don't think so. So, you read to as many kids as you like, but as long as you're going to treat the aina a certain way, we're not going to get along. All right. Poem goes like this. I also have a family in the military. They're actually overseas right now, because you guys. All right. It goes, sitting on the docks, fishing with friends, talking story. Reminiscing on times near forgotten. Conversation suddenly ceases when we see the monster approaching us. It was a moving island. Flying the flag of the U.S. war machine. It was an aircraft carrier, ready to leave Pearl Harbor, Oahu, Hawaiʻi, headed for the Persian Gulf. Instantly, thoughts explode. Emotions crash violently in the darkness. And in the silence of the docks, my soul whispers to the people of Iraq and Afghanistan, I say, I'm sorry, for the Americans are coming. In warships, steaming forward, acting on orders, laying plans of invasion, the Americans are coming. To export democracy through the barrel of a gun to a once sovereign nation, the Americans are coming. And they're calling it Operation Iraqi Freedom. And it makes me wonder for a minute on the meaning of the word, freedom. And I wonder, who can claim the proper copyrights to it, Freedom. Did you use it to describe the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom? Did you guys free us? The people of the land? Did you liberate us? Well, 100+ years since the overthrow of our nation, 50+ years since statehood, now we're a minority in our own homeland. We used to be a proud people, lived off the aina, knew our history and culture, spoke with the tongues of our ancestors, navigated the Pacific by starlight with 20/20 sight on visions of what lay before us over the horizon. But then one day foreign ships came with the religions of Christianity, empire, and capital. And we died from the diseases of progress, the loss of land and culture, dispossessed from ourselves and our history. We lost control of our future, and we died. By the hundreds of thousands, we died. And on the beaches, now owned by the military, in Honolulu, Waimanalo, Makaha, Waihole, Waikane, Makua, Pahakuloa, we are still dying. On waiting lists for lands once used to feed villages, we are still dying. In the backs of cop cars, prison cells, homeless shelters, rehab centers, we are still dying the slow death of an occupied nation. Like the indigenous peoples of North America were slaughtered for the lands they lived on and forced to live on reservations, the Americans came to Hawaiʻi and made me a citizen. Naturalized by way of invasion, liberated in the name of capital. Thanks to military-enforced regime change, the occupied kingdom of Hawaiʻi is now the 50th state of sorry affairs, where the cost of living is rising so fast, na kanaka maoli o ka aina, the native people of the land can barely afford to live. So is it any wonder why we are still dying? Enlisting our sons and daughters into Uncle Sam's armed services, hoping they can see college before they die. Receive affordable housing and medical care before they die. so that they can travel overseas to exotic places, kill them for their land before they die. So that America could claim another country, another island, another people, another ionized, just another resource. Exploited under the American flag. I'm sorry, I lost my place in the poem, but basically it was an anti-imperialist rant against capitalism, and I'm supporting the downsides against you guys. I'm really emotional right now. I just want to make sure that it is for the public record that you will add my name to the kids' petition. And thank you very much. Oh, and next time you do this in Hale Koa, all right, if the politicians want to get up, let them, just like everybody else who may have voted for you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Aloha, my name is Pete Doctor, prior service in the Army, combat medic. However, I stepped down from service when I realized I was just being used, not to fight for defense of the nation, but for economic and political interests. And then I found a better way to serve my nation through helping our kids as a teacher. At least I was trying. Just got 3 main points out of respect for people's time. And a quick comment about respect too. I know that some are feeling that some of the jeering and yelling earlier was rude and disrespectful, but consider what you've heard tonight, that there is a lot of PTSD here. There's been cultural genocide here. There's been an ethnic cleansing process. So jeering, invading country, we're gonna debate all day about what's rude and disrespectful. And just see where that came from. Yeah. No, I say that seriously, out of understanding what happens with trauma coming from a military family. My first main point is a lot of people are making the argument that the bases should be here for our security. I question that. If you know history, which I didn't when I enlisted, so I made sure I used that GI Bill to find out what I was not taught in the DOE schools, is that the military actually has been a magnet historically for military conflict here to Hawaii. And whether it's North Korea pointing weapons at us, hello, it's because we got them pointing at them. And we only need to look at what you guys call Pearl Harbor. Pu'uloa to us was a primary example of a military invasion here. And that's all it's done is attracted more military conflict. I wish people in the military get used for. Second main point is that it's been argued that the military is here to secure life. Okay? Ask you to consider World War II. They had considered if the Japanese successfully invaded the islands, that the military had what they call a scorched earth policy, that they would burn down the islands so the Japanese could not do what the Americans were doing as a military deployment. I don't think that's taking care of the people. And I think that's what we're still going on. I live in Maunalua. I am surrounded, I'm not exaggerating, in every cardinal direction by military installation. And rather than being, there's a boogeyman du jour, we have to worry about some invasion. I have to worry about the real, it's not a theory, it's very real, about my daughter's brain development because of leaks in Tripler and now Red Hill is a day-to-day concern I have about the safety of our drinking water. That's the security we need. We need human security. This is really about political and financial security, if you hear the pro-military voices, which I argue is an insult. I did not serve in the military because it was good for the economy. And all those that are making the argument, that's exactly what you're doing, is exploiting the military because it's good for their economy. Now, I'm not being anti-military per se, not preaching pacifism. I'm being anti-militarism. And if you don't understand about being anti-military, military is reasonable defense of your borders versus militarism and economic political exploitation of the military for policy, whether it's domestic or international. And if war solved all their problems, we would have had world peace centuries ago, you think? Right? So, obviously I'm for the downsizing. This is obviously, and there's been a lot, I don't want to repeat what's been said before. What has been mentioned, this is, historically, this is all about securing markets overseas. So let's not be honest. Let's be honest about this and quit denial. You've heard them talk about Holocaust denial. There's something about the overthrow denial, about the Native, the Holocaust of the Americas denial. These are the stories you need to also add to the context here to understand what's going on. We clearly have this is not, like someone said, this is not democracy, it's a republic, and clearly what we have is a political machine. And they said, well, these are elected leaders. Yeah. The point that 40% of people voted is a statement of how broken our system is. So it's, as you look at our Princeton study, we do not have democracy, we have an oligarchy. Because we only have a minority really voting, getting being represented. So I was going to close with a Eisenhower quote, but already 3 people have evoked the industrial complex. So I'll leave you with another general. It's interesting how these generals don't speak up until after they left, right? Right? Eisenhower, and the one I want to leave you with is Smedley Butler, Marine Corps, two medals of honor. He said, war is just a racket, it's a scam. It is conducted for the benefit of very few at the expense of the masses. But this is not about politics, this is about my daughter's future. We got to do better than this. Politicians, since World War II, we've been counting on, since the Depression, counting on wars to bail us out economically. That is not, that's not an economic system. That's an imperial system, and we want to more than that. And lastly, I'll just close with reminding you guys, because everyone keeps talking about the strategy. We're not a strategy, we're a community, grounded in a divided one. All right? We are not a strategy. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Aloha. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Kajihiro. I'm with Hawaii Peace and Justice. We strongly support the proposed Army reduction. I think it's a necessary first step towards addressing some of these historical wrongs that you've got a sense of here today. You have a history problem here. The genealogy of the military's presence in Hawaii began with what was called by President Cleveland an act of war against a peaceful and neutral country. And so that basic fact hasn't gone away. The result of that overthrow is that today the military controls hundreds of thousands of acres of land, the majority of which are lands of the Hawaiian Kingdom that were wrongfully taken and are disputed as to their status. And not to mention the island of Oahu, a quarter of our island, a small little island, a quarter of it is controlled by the military. So those are a tremendous burden for the community to bear for 100 years. I want to talk some stories and bring some voices in that are not with us in life today, but are a part of our movement. In 1976, 9 young Native Hawaiians landed on Kaho'olawe Island to protest the Navy bombing of the sacred place. They put their lives on the line at great risk. They were removed relatively quickly, but soon there was another landing and another and another, and it grew into a movement. This movement inspired a cultural renaissance. It inspired a sovereignty movement. It energized the community to see the possibilities of what they could do with determination, with good intentions, with their hearts and spirits in the right place to care for the land. Aloha Aina was their slogan, to love the land, to care for it. And they succeeded. In 1990, the bombing stopped. The land has been returned. The cleanup is still an ongoing problem, but that has been progress. Within a couple of months of the first landing in 1976, there was a rally in Makua Valley on Oahu to also protest the Army's lifeguard training in that valley and the wrongful taking of that land. And that struggle has continued from the 70s to the present. So as others have mentioned, through the combination of protests and legal challenges, we've been able to stop training in that valley for 10 years, and we will get Makua returned to the community. It's just a matter of time. But we would rather it be done in a proactive way as opposed to an antagonistic way. And we see that this proposal for Army downsizing is an opportunity for us to move forward, to lean into the change, and see that good things can come out of it, because there are opportunities in this. I want to bring two other elders into this room with us. Uncle Walter Kamana would share his stories of growing up as a child in Makua Valley. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, he was evicted. His whole community was evicted from the valley. They were given 24 hours to move their things down the road, and he watched as his homes and the church was destroyed for target practice. They painted a white cross on the roof of the church and they bombed it. He was haunted by that image all his life, and he's passed away now. But his story has also embedded and implanted itself in the hearts of many people in the community, and we carry on his vision to see that land return. What was promised is that the land will come back 6 months after the war, and that was World War II. So it hasn't come back. Another kupuna I want to bring into the room is Uncle Raymond Kamaka. Uncle Raymond's family had land in Waikani Valley for many generations. They lent their lands to the military during World War II for training, and they were promised that it would be cleaned up and returned after the war. It was returned he began farming in the 70s, but unexploded ordnance turned up. At that point, the Marines condemned the parcel over his objections, over his protests, and just because it was too expensive and too dangerous. He fought continuously for many years and just recently passed away, unable to see the progress that we have made now, getting the Marines to begin taking the cleanup project seriously. So they've begun the process of removing that ordinance, and hopefully the productive agriculture areas will come back to the community. So there is progress that we can see. I think that downsizing needs to be done responsibly. Many people will be affected by this negatively, and I think that should be also taken into consideration, so that there is an economic transition, there is ways to help the dislocated workers, the businesses that will be affected, so that they can also look forward to transitioning to an alternative future. And the mayor brought up Barbara's Point, but unfortunately he's not here. I think the failure of Barbara's Point was the failure of imagination, the failure of political will. It's precisely the result of the kind of a symptom victim of the kind of political reaction we're having right now to this Army proposal. People were in avoidance mode, they were in denial, and they failed to embrace the change and move it forward in a way that was actually beneficial for the community. So I welcome your coming here and bringing this question before us. I hope that you will choose to downsize the Army in Hawaii to the fullest extent so that we can begin the process of reconciling this broken relationship that we have. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
I'm Betty Larson, and I support keeping the Army here in Hawaii. I've lived here for over 40 years. For the past 25 years, I've worked with nonprofits to try to create more affordable rental housing for low-income people and to end homelessness. Unfortunately, we are an international market, and so houses that the military might leave that are renting for $2,000 or $3,000 a month are probably not going to go down much in price, and the people I work with are not going to be able to afford any of those homes. We need to have partnerships with the state to create more affordable rental housing. And I'm very concerned about the impact on the state economy and the revenues to the state. The governor just yesterday announced that he wanted to see a $100 million initiative for affordable housing along the transit route for the train. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we don't have the revenues, if the state doesn't have the revenues, it can't put in. And I'm on a nonprofit that builds affordable rental housing. It has to pencil out to be affordable. We want it to be affordable. We don't want it to be so high that no one can afford it. So you have to have that government subsidy. You have to have that partnership with the state. If the revenue's not there, as in the 2008 and on when the recession, things got cut back. And the revenue wasn't there. Now things are getting better, and so we're looking at this. We're looking at social service needs and affordable housing needs. I'm really happy about that. But I'm fearful that this is a big threat. The TOD effort is so important because we need thousands of units, and this is an opportunity. If it passes it by, this is the opportunity of our generation to really look at affordable rental housing in these very good areas. But we also need housing in many other areas. It's not just affordable housing along the route. That's a big opportunity. We need really hundreds of millions of dollars over the next 5 to 10 years to make an impact, to help our low-income people, to help our homeless, to help the people who really need housing. And again, it has to be that the state has the revenues to put into that. And so that's my biggest concern is that also social services. When the recession hit in 2008, social services were cut. Everything was cut, but there were severe cuts in social services. Again, we're just starting to come back. Child abuse services, many different services would be impacted. And it hits, the people who have the least amount of money and the least ability to cope with those kind of hurts. So again, the impact on the state and the revenues is a housing issue. To me, it's a social service issue. It really, I can't say what that impact would be, but I'm hearing from the legislators, $1.3 billion. This is a significant amount of money that could be lost to the state. So I just ask you to support keeping the troops here. I think the economic devastation would be severe, and it will have an impact on the very low-income people that I work with all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Davey Strand. I live in IAEA. I thank you for holding this hearing and giving people the opportunity to participate. My wife and I were really, really excited about coming and being able to provide testimony because we see that the great potential benefit to Hawaii of the downsizing of the Army personnel, particularly if it means turning over Army land to civilian use. We moved here a year and a half ago from San Francisco. My wife grew up in Hawaii, and we actually live in the house that she lived in as a high school student presently. We lived in San Francisco for about 30 years, and we witnessed a very successful downsizing and demilitarization of the San Francisco area. And I just wanted to show that it works when you diminish the number of military personnel and turn land over to civilian
uses, it can work fabulously. And in San Francisco, perhaps the best example is the Presidio. The Presidio in San Francisco it's a very large base within the city of San Francisco. There was an army base since 1776. It was a Spanish base, then a Mexican base, and then an American base. And then in the 1990s, the army was going to pull out, and there was a great deal of effort to make that work in a way to benefit the people of San Francisco. And it did, in many ways. First of all, the conversion itself produced many, many jobs. Secondly, lots of housing became available to the people of San Francisco, housing there was military housing for officers and for the enlisted men. Thirdly, the recreational use, much of it is now operated by the National Park Service. It's very green and it's very open to recreational use of the people of San Francisco. A lot of the buildings are now available to nonprofit organizations which operate in an area that is very helpful. But probably the most important thing of all is the attraction of high-tech industry to the city of San Francisco into that area. Most notably, Lucasfilms. George Lucas put his operation there. They're the creators of movies that we all know, The Empire Strikes Back, etc. I believe that rather than focusing their energies on trying to keep the Army here, we should revel in the opportunity of developing alternative ways of dealing with the land and the housing and the potential of jobs, and we can do that. I've seen the future of this kind of thing. It works, and so I'm very happy that this will happen, and I hope that it does happen. Thank you.
Aloha kako. My name is Dave Gonzalez, and I support the Army's proposal to downsize on Oahu. Army personnel in Hawaii are unable to achieve required levels of combat readiness standards due to the inability to participate in combined Army live fire exercises, CALFEX for short. There are significant shortcomings in the CALFEX facility on Oahu, including the fact that the Army has been unable to use the facility for 10 years now. But more importantly, the CALFEX range is grossly inadequate, which, if ever open, would prevent Army units from experiencing realistic training that the Army desperately needs at the company level. The CALFEX range was built in 1988, many years before the Army developed the Stryker vehicle and stationed a Stryker brigade at Schofield Barracks. The current range does not accommodate off-road use of the Strykers and limits the commander to employing only 5 vehicles out of the 21 vehicles that are assigned here. I'm sorry. Moreover, the live fire experience is crippled by nighttime restrictions, preventing commanders from practicing the critically needed task of integrating and coordinating the variety of weapon systems during periods of limited visibility. The range contributed to combat readiness in World War II, but times have changed changed drastically, and the range located in Makua Valley can no longer accommodate the exponential growth in combat power and reach that today's 24/7 units combat conditions are required. The range simply cannot accommodate a company's sized unit, nor provide the commander with realistic 24/7 combat conditions. If the Army cannot train here, is not combat ready here, cannot deploy quickly enough from here, and pays a fortune to be based here, then this is where the personnel cuts should be made. Thank you very much. So I do support downsize and deoccupy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. I certainly respect and appreciate all the different perspectives that are being shared this evening. And if I may share my perspective. My name is Sherry Minor McNamara. I'm the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, a statewide business organization with 1,000-member organizations representing more than 200,000 employees. My father served in the Army, and as someone who has seen the sacrifices our military men and women made and who have benefited from these sacrifices, I, along with millions of others, would like to thank you for your service to our communities, state, and nation. The Chamber has always supported the military's presence in Hawaii. Through our Military Affairs Council, which we also call MAC, we have served as a state liaison since 1985. And the MAC's primary function is to promote, preserve, and protect the military in Hawaii. Last year, we restructured the MAC to serve as a more proactive and collaborative advocate for the military. Our work includes providing advocacy, communication, community outreach, and job creation, supporting the preservation of our military installations and activities with business, labor, and also city, county, state, and federal leadership, communicating priority issues with key stakeholders and the broader community, working with our partners to improve the overall quality of life experience for our military and their families, from housing and education to become a part of our extended Hawaii Ohana. Working with the military in Hawaii to create public-private partnerships, including energy, research, and technology. The MAC supports job creation and opportunities for the Department of Defense to accomplish its missions and activities cost-effectively. And the Chamber and the MAC will continue to support the military in Hawaii and fully commit our time and resources to do so. The Chamber recognizes the significant impact any cuts would have on our state. From an economic standpoint, the direct and indirect impacts of military expenditures are reported to generate $14.7 billion into Hawaii's economy, creating more than 102,000 jobs for residents that collectively report household incomes around $8.7 billion. The loss of this income would definitely have a negative impact. These expenditures touch every sector of our economy, from STEM to education, housing, construction, retail, healthcare, agriculture, and sustainable energy. From a strategic standpoint, Hawaii serves as a vital location for national and economic security. As Defense Secretary Hale stated at a forum, our rebalance to the Asia Pacific is about more than just military-to-military relations. It's economic, it's trade, it's social, it's cultural, it's education, it's security, it's stability. All of these are part of relationships in an interconnected world. From a community standpoint, schools, small businesses, and families, an integral part of the communities, will be impacted. The military is part of the social fabric of our society. They are our extended ohana, which is why, in preparing for the listening session and to show our strong support, the MAC launched the Keep Hawaii's Heroes campaign. It was a means to develop and generate support and collect petition signatures in support of the military in Hawaii. Our goal was to get 40,000 signatures, and we exceeded that number, and I'm sure there's thousands more out there in the community who would have signed the petition as well. And this shows that our state has and will continue to support the military in Hawaii. Mahalo.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
40,000 signatures. The Kuia had 40,000 signatures.
Yeah.
You never listened in.
Exactly.
And that was nearly 93% of the total population in the country of Hawaii. 40,000 signatures is a drop in a bucket to today's population. Don't forget that. The Ku'e is still in Washington that needs to be addressed. My name is Uncle Joe Tassel. I was born and raised in Waimanalo. Bellows Field was mostly Waimanalo, and Waimanalo Sugar was mostly Waimanalo. My grandmother, who took me out of the hospital after my mother gave me birth, and the doctors told my grandmother, he's not gonna live, he's gonna die. My grandmother gave me life in Waimanalo Homestead, Department Land and Natural Resources, Department of Hawaiian Homelands. Today, thank you, grandmother, I'm a commissioner on Hawaiian Homelands. I live in Waimanalo. I went home to make sure that my grandmother that took me home to die, I will die in Waimanalo. I am here because I'm a commissioner on Hawaiian Homelands. I do not speak for Hawaiian Homes as a commissioner, but I speak as a beneficiary. And the list of beneficiaries that are on the waiting list because they have no home to go to. That's why I'm here. I'm here to represent them because, first of all, many of them are at work now on their second job because they need to fulfill their financial responsibility. And one job in Hawaii, in many cases, does not meet that, and they need to work at a second job. I am here for others that are also in favor of downsizing military because they don't have a meeting on the islands where they live, like I have the opportunity here. So what I'm saying to you is, don't they deserve a meeting also to come and share their manao, their innermost thoughts about what the military has done? Now, for the two gentlemen that lived, or for the two kupuna that lived in Makua, when that church was bombed out, I got two more kupuna that lived in Kona when we took the target down. And I say we because there were four of us. George Hightower and his wife, Possum, along with Big Earl Perry and Brother Joe Tassel, that challenged the military 50 years ago to take the target down in Kapua, about 5 miles south of Miloli'i, and every time the military went there for a bomb run, the fishermen could not go fishing. And you don't tell the fish when or when not to run. They run on their own time. So depriving the fishermen from doing their daily needs of getting food for their families. Well, we beat the target, we took the target down, but you know, it's been 50 years and there's still live ordnance on the ground, and we were promised then that military would clean up and hand the land back to Hawaii. Well, as long as there is live ordnance on the ground, we are not to go there. History tells us that there has been 9 people that have been killed as a result of live ordnance on the ground. Let me bring 2 more people to the table before I tell you my point. George Kell and Kimo Mitchell, who gave their lives for Kaho'olawe. I was there too. And I was at Vieques in Puerto Rico when the Navy didn't show up for their exercises. I was there too. I was in Makua when the DLNR finally came there to clean up and arrest, I believe, 11 people. I was there too. Now let me finish with a poem. A poem that my kupuna practiced every day of their life. It's called We the Willing. Led by the unknowing is doing the impossible for the very grateful. They did so much, so long with so little, they could do everything with nothing. I leave you with this question. Why does everybody come to Hawaii? Because Hawaii is paradise. But the question is, why does it smell and look like hell today? I'll tell you why. Because we are not in charge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being here and listening to us, and thank everyone else before me who is supporting the Army downsizing as I do, and appreciate everyone's wonderful testimonies. And okay, so my name is Lisa Mitchell, and I'm supporting the Army downsizing because, as the programmatic environmental assessment states, the DoD budget increased 119% from 2001 to 2010 in response to 9/11, borrowing $2 trillion to fight the present wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And so the U.S. is now $9 trillion in debt and counting, because the costs of war far outweigh any benefits, as over 33,000 wounded veterans need lifetime medical and disability care, and a total of 2 million veterans back from these wars are now registering to collect their promised benefits. And this does not include those soldiers still involved in overseas missions in the Middle East. And it's these costs of war which are crippling the DoD and federal budget, therefore needing to downsize. And the DoD chose to downsize the Army in Hawaii for many logistic and economic reasons. So as the voice of business, the Chamber of Commerce could better utilize their resources to help build a sustainable, dependable economic future for Wahiawa and Hawaii. Yesterday, Governor Ige announced a $10 million budget for the Hawaii Growth Initiative, finally allowing for a high-tech, new growth economy to emerge. Job retooling and educational opportunities from environmental cleanups to a Hawaii film industry can rebuild the losses from the Army if given a chance. We are in the 21st century, and it's time for us to become more evolved as humans. So giving more money to peace efforts guarantees saves more lives and more money and spreads the wealth more equitably, as well as perpetuates what's needed most, the aloha spirit. As the land of aloha, oh boy, I can't read the rest, but I think you folks get what I mean. There's going to be more benefits to peace than there is war. It's pretty obvious. After 10 years of fighting in Afghanistan, there's still terrorism, there's still increasing violence, still a lot of chaos. War obviously doesn't work, and it's just not sustainable economically and spiritually. I think somebody else mentioned that. And we all can use the healing, and we are going into a new generation, a new century. We just need to start a whole new way of life. it'll be better for everybody in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
As someone born and reared in the state of Hawaii, I absolutely support the Department of Defense and the U.S. Army in their recommendation to downsize the Army, and in particular, to reduce the number of soldiers here on Oahu by 19,800. If the Army sees fit to make it more, that would be even better. With our soldiers prepared to sacrifice life, limb, and their limbs and their very lives for our nation's defense, the least we Americans can do is give them our full support for the best training they can get. Hawaii's training facilities for our soldiers are inadequate compared to what they can get on the mainland. For their sakes, they should be there, not here. And we in Hawaii, too, will be better off. The military takes up nearly 25% of the land here on Oahu. That's outrageous. Further, the military gets housing allowances that are way over what the typical local can afford to pay. We have a serious homeless problem with a large part of Hawaii's population who are not homeless, just a paycheck or two away from losing a place to stay. The chief reason is that many people cannot afford to pay the average $1,500 to $1,700 per month rent. That's the average. Mortgage payments to own a home are considerably more. Yet an E5 who is single gets $2,500 a month in housing allowance, with a colonel receiving $3,500. They get hundreds more if they have dependents. We local residents can't compete with that. Making things even more difficult, there are landlords on this island who will only rent to military. As a concrete example of what we locals face in competing for housing, there's a huge apartment complex up on Red Hill, next to the Kaiser Hospital on Moanalua Road Highway, and not too far from Tripler Hospital. It's called Moanalua Hillside Apartments. It was built for Section 8 housing for low-income families quite a while ago, decades ago, and it's said to be the largest apartment complex on Oahu. If it's not the largest, it's definitely one of the largest. Around the year 2000, the federal government divested its interest in that apartment complex, and it was sold to private owners. It was quickly flipped a few times at a nice profit for each of those owners. It was rumored. The rents rapidly increased. Now, this was set aside as affordable housing by the state or the county. And the rents rapidly increased, and quickly, within a couple of years, almost all the locals that were living there moved out. They just could not afford it. And replacing them were military personnel who were stationed at nearby bases, such as Pearl Harbor or Hickam. The complex became notorious among locals all over Oahu. It wasn't in the papers, but us locals knew about it because we heard from our friends how the new owners were squeezing the renters for higher rent every time they renewed their lease every year. And they were asking an increase of $100 or $150 every year. That's why the locals left and the military moved in. The military residents, by and large, didn't seem to have a problem with the rent. For one thing, they weren't there that long to notice the sizable, repetitive annual rental increases. For another, the rent was probably considerably less than their housing allowance. If Hawaii is fortunate enough to receive the full 19,800 troop downsizing, then many of us hope that present military land, such as Schofield Barracks, Wheeler Army Airfield, Makua Valley, Dillingham Military Reservation, and Kalikali Pass, will be returned to the people of Hawaii. Those, if handled responsibly, could considerably help alleviate our severe housing problem, could give birth to new businesses or be a new location to old ones, and help stave off the cannibalization of some of Oahu's best agricultural land, which is the best in the world, to housing developments. It was a soil analyst professor that told me that our Hawaii land right here on Oahu is the best in the world. The Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii is a powerful lobbying group They've been around for many years. They have cozy relationships with our politicians. And they are behind the Keep Hawaii's Heroes movement. Our mayor, Kirk Caldwell, we wanted to give you the petitions earlier, used the personnel and the city facilities to gather those petition signatures. They were in all the city satellite offices, and people that went there to get their driver's licenses or to get their car registration renewed saw a big poster there, Keep Hawaii's Heroes, petition at such and such counter.
Neighborhood board meetings.
The mayor also, the petition signers also used Blaisdell Center, the big center, a few blocks from here, maybe a couple miles from here. That's county property, and that's where the petition signers gathered some more signatures. And they went. The mayor sent his delegate to all the neighborhood boards. There were about maybe 30 or 40 of them. And that delegate asked the people there at the neighborhood boards to sign that petition. So it was all one-sided. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is D'Angelo McIntyre, and first of all, I'd like to explain why I've had a sudden amount of outbursts. As you heard my last name, I am a Scotch-Irishman, and I have hot Irish blood. And the reason that my blood is so hot is because when I came here, I learned the true history of how Hawaii was acquired, which is why I have on this red ribbon. Queen Liliuokalani put this ribbon on a letter of protest that she sent to the United States in Washington, D.C. for overthrowing the Hawaiian kingdom. The President of the United States, when I was 7 years old in 1993, publicly apologized for doing it. I think the least that we could do, some 21 years later, is downsize the military presence, not only here on Oahu, but everywhere. While you're at it, do it everywhere. We have gone into economic depression because of war. And this is not a strategic military point. This is someone's house. This is these people's home. And as a person of First People origin, an African and a Native American, I share their pain in being stomped on by the American government. You know, there was a few people that were talking about, oh, we have this many signatures on a petition to keep the military here. If you'd have went back in time to the 1500s and got a people's signature on whether or not the earth was flat, you would have had that many signatures. It did not make it right. We should not only downsize our military, we should return independence to these people. What we did was wrong, and we have gone to war with other people over the same shit that we have done here. When I was 5 years old in 1991, President Bush told Saddam Hussein to get out of Iraq. His reply was get out of Hawaii.
Thanks, sir. Ma'am?
My name is Ann Wright. I'm a retired U.S. Army Reserve Colonel, 13 years on active duty and 16 in the reserves. I was also a U.S. diplomat and served in Nicaragua, Grenada, Somalia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Sierra Leone, Micronesia, helped reopen the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan in December of 2001, and in 2003, while I was the Deputy Ambassador in the U.S. Embassy in Mongolia, I resigned in opposition to the war in Iraq. I'm a resident of Hawaii. I've spent my whole life in national security issues. I think this is a very important opportunity for the Army to break the stranglehold that Hawaii politicians have had on Army policies. I know when I served in the Pentagon, one of the craziest things that we would talk about is how in the world are we putting so many people out in Hawaii when we can't even use them? And right now, when the Army is going to be reduced to the smallest number since World War II, it seems like it's a very practical thing for us to consider to put our Army in a place where we can use them quickly if we need them. Hawaii is not the spot. You need to put them, as others have said, in places where there is airlift and where there is sea lift, so that you can get them and their vehicles and everything else where we need to have them for our national defense and not for the political reasons of politicians in Hawaii. Hawaiians can take care of themselves, and those of us who are lucky enough to be here on Hawaiian lands are willing to help to create the opportunities for those that are inconvenienced by the removal of U.S. military forces. It can be done, and for the sake of this unique and beautiful, remarkable place, these small little islands called Hawaii, we definitely need to reduce the U.S. Army in Hawaii. Thank you.
Good evening and aloha. My name is Pete Sims. I live in Mililani, nearby Schofield Barracks, and I represent Island Palm Communities, which is the partnership with the military that manages, owns, maintains the housing for the Army, housing on Schofield Barracks and other properties. In 1996, Congress passed the Military Housing Privatization Initiative to enable the DoD through public-private partnership to eliminate inadequate housing for military members and their families. Since 2005, we have been engaged in that business. We've spent over $1.7 billion constructing homes and renovating others, with 95% of those contracts going to local and small businesses here in Hawaii. We've created over 1,000 jobs doing that. We still have another $700 million or so to spend in the next 5 years to complete our housing project in the initial development period. We also, as a business, have the pleasure of looking after these families and taking care of them on a daily basis through our operations. We have over 300 employees from the area that operate and maintain and help residents with their daily challenges. And so this is a great project. We're very concerned about the potential downsizing of the Army here in Hawaii, as it would directly affect our ability to continue to maintain those homes to the standards we've been able to create. So I'd offer that for your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir?
Good evening, Mr. McLaren, Major General Flynn. Thank you for holding this session tonight. Friends, neighbors, my name is Alan Hayashi. I'm testifying as an individual here tonight. I am employed by a defense contractor, but I did not clear my remarks. I didn't have enough time. So for full disclosure, I'm here as an individual. But I did want to make some comments, and they go to the issue of the Army's proposal to downsize. I'm in opposition to that action. I think that the Army can be a force for good. You have been in many instances. You've heard some issues tonight that I think it would be well to take back, but in general, I know you folks as good neighbors and good community citizens. As to why the Army should stay in Hawaii, in my experience, the Army is more than a fighting force. What you do for human disaster and the relief, HADAR, is something that we all are benefiting by when it happens here. Hawaii is one of the islands that could be severely affected if we ever have a tsunami or a hurricane of major proportions. I went to Kauai after Iwa, or Iniki, and I saw the devastation, and I know what the military did to help the community, and I think that if that, God forbid, should ever happen on Oahu, we'd have a major problem without the military here. And for you to be downsizing, pulling equipment out to other places, you will not have time to get the equipment back here in time to help. So that would be one of the reasons